The rain hammered against the windows, a relentless, rhythmic sound that mirrored the storm brewing inside me. I sat in my study, staring at the screen before me, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Every keystroke felt like a decision that would alter the course of my life forever. How had I ended up here? Watching my wife, Sophia, through the thin veil of doubt and anger, wondering who she had become after more than a decade together. The truth had arrived like an unstoppable wave, crashing into my life with a force I hadn't been prepared for. I had always known Sophia as ambitious, driven, qualities that had drawn me to her when we first met in a prestigious luxury hospitality firm in Vienna. She was sharp, charming, the epitome of grace in the eyes of everyone around her. But over the years something had changed. I saw it in the way she pulled away, emotionally, physically. The late nights, the long hours at the office, the way our conversations had turned hollow, devoid of warmth. At first, I told myself it was work stress, a demanding job, an exhausting schedule. But deep down I knew something was off. It was a gnawing feeling that refused to be silenced, an intuition I couldn't shake. And then one evening I found the note. A small, unassuming piece of paper tucked away in the bottom of her drawer. The words on it burned through the trust one had spent years building with her. "Meet me at 8 tonight. The usual place. Don't be late." It was signed by someone I didn't recognize. I tried to rationalize it, maybe a friend, a colleague. But deep down I knew. The reality I had been avoiding was staring me in the face. I needed to hear it from her own lips, to confirm what my heart already knew. But confronting her outright wasn't an option. I needed proof. So I made a decision. The choice that would set everything in motion. I planted a listening device. It wasn't easy. I had to be careful, discreet. I hid it inside the frame of a family portrait on the mantel. Small, undetectable. She would never suspect a thing. That evening, I sat alone in my study, headphones in place, listening to every word that came from her lips. At first it was nothing. Small talk, light laughter. Then a shift in her voice. "Yes, everything is fine. I'll be home soon. You know I'm counting the days until we can be together." There was something in her tone I hadn't heard in years. Excitement. Longing. A softness she no longer reserved for me. And then the words that shattered me. "You can't imagine how much my husband disgusts me." A cold, cruel laugh followed, sending an icy dread through my veins. "I'm done pretending to be a loving wife. It's all been a charade." The world around me blurred. My hands clenched into fists. My pulse pounded in my ears. My wife, the woman I had built a life with, spoke about me with such disdain, such exhaustion, as if I were nothing more than an obstacle in her path. She went on, talking about how tiring it was to maintain the illusion of a happy marriage. How she was only staying for the money, for the image. How she had been waiting for the right moment to leave and start fresh with her lover. Someone who, in her words, was everything I wasn't: bold, confident, thrilling. I listened as she painted a picture of a marriage that, to her, had been nothing more than a performance. I had been a prop. A puppet. A means to an end. But here's the thing, I wasn't angry. Not at first. I was numb. I had been living in a lie, and now, stripped of all illusions, I stood on the edge of a precipice, uncertain whether I would fall or take flight. But as the weight of betrayal sank in, numbness gave way to something else. A fire. A hunger for justice. For revenge. She would not walk away unscathed. For weeks I played my role, the devoted husband, the unwavering supporter. I smiled at the dinner table. I asked about her day. I kissed her goodnight. But beneath the surface I was planning. Plotting. I started small. Misplacing important documents. Canceling meetings. Subtly undermining her in ways she wouldn't immediately notice. She prided herself on control, on being meticulous. So I chipped away at that control, making her doubt herself piece by piece. She would never see it coming. But as I laid the groundwork for her downfall, a question lingered in my mind: was this the right path? Would destroying her truly bring me peace? Or was I merely letting her win by becoming someone I never intended to be? The night of reckoning arrived like the calm before a storm. She came home late as always, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floors. The sound of her keys jingled as she set them down. I was waiting. "How was your day?" I asked, my voice steady, unreadable. "Same as always," she replied, not meeting my gaze. But tonight the act was over. I leaned forward, my voice softer, laced with something she couldn't quite place. "I've heard some things, Sophia. Things that have made me question everything." She froze. Her breath caught. Her hands clenched at her sides. For the first time in years I saw something real in her eyes. Not love. Not regret. Fear. And in that moment I knew, whatever happened next she would never see it coming. She stood there, frozen, her breath coming in shallow gasps as she tried to make sense of what was happening. The truth had been unraveling in fragments over the past few weeks. Subtle shifts in our relationship, unspoken tensions, and hints of my growing awareness. But now there was no more room for doubt. The mask had slipped. "You're not as clever as you think, Sophia," I said, my voice eerily calm, though a coldness had settled into my very being, chilling the air between us. "You thought you could keep your secrets hidden, but I've been paying attention, every little detail." She parted her lips, struggling to find words, but nothing came. Silence swallowed her whole. For the first time, I saw it, the weight of her own deception crushing down on her, the realization that everything she had built on lies was crumbling beneath her feet. The arrogance, the superiority she had carried for so long, it was slipping away. "How long, Sophia?" I asked softly, my words hanging in the air like a blade poised to fall. "How long have you been seeing him?" Her eyes darted away, unable to meet mine. She had expected a confrontation, maybe even an argument, but not this. Not this deliberate, calculated dismantling of the world she had crafted so carefully. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, but her voice wavered, and I heard the lie in her hesitation. She didn't know that I had already heard it all. The phone calls, the whispers, the venomous words that had shattered the illusion of our marriage. This was no longer about seeking the truth. I already had it. The only thing left was her reckoning. I stepped closer, watching as she flinched. There was a strange satisfaction in seeing her falter, seeing the cracks in the perfect facade she had maintained for so long. "Don't lie to me, Sophia. You can't pretend anymore. I've known for weeks. I've heard everything." I pulled out my phone, pressing play on the recording. Her voice filled the room, cold, callous, dripping with contempt. She had once spoken to me with love, with admiration. Now I listened to her laughter, cruel and mocking. "You can't imagine how much my husband disgusts me. I'm done pretending to be a loving wife." The color drained from her face as she listened to her own words, the very words that had destroyed the last remnants of the man I used to be. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape, but there was none. She was trapped, caged by the truth she had spun around herself. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of her guilt. I let out a slow breath, feeling the last traces of the man who had once loved her slip away. "You've hurt me enough already, Sophia. But what you've done to me is nothing compared to what I'm going to do to you." The words were steady, calculated. I wasn't acting out of rage. No, that would be too easy. This wasn't going to be a moment of emotional retaliation. It was going to be something far more precise, something she would never see coming. The days that followed blurred together, but through it all, one thing remained clear. I was in control now. She had destroyed me emotionally. Now I would dismantle her world piece by piece. Sophia had built her career on charm, on manipulation, on the careful cultivation of an image. I began to strip that away one thread at a time. Anonymous emails were sent to her superiors, carefully worded insinuations about her leadership, whispered concerns about her ethics. The cracks in her reputation widened, spreading through the corridors of power like an infection. But I wasn't done. Over the years, she had relied on the trust fund I had set up for her before our marriage, the financial safety net she assumed would always be there. She didn't realize that in the past few months, I had orchestrated every financial decision we made, ensuring that when the moment arrived, she would be left with nothing. Sophia valued control above all else, and I took it from her in the most excruciating way possible. Not through anger. Not through violence. But through patience, through precision. The confrontation came when she least expected it. Weeks of tension had left her paranoid, restless. She felt the ground shifting beneath her feet, though she still clung to the illusion that she could regain control. I called her into the living room one evening, leaning back in my chair as she hesitantly entered. My fingers tapped against the armrest in a slow, steady rhythm. "I know what you're doing, Sophia," I said casually, watching her stiffen, her hands gripping the back of a chair for support. "You've been trying to cover your tracks, but you're not as clever as you think." Her face twisted, a storm brewing in her eyes, a mixture of fury and fear. "What are you talking about?" she demanded, her voice sharp, desperate. I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a near whisper. "You think you've won. You think you can still hold on to the life you built. But while you've been scrambling to hide your affair, I've been dismantling everything. And I don't think you'll ever recover from it." Her breath hitched. She knew. She didn't need me to explain it to her. The pieces had already begun to fall. "You can't do this to me," she hissed, her voice shaking. You have no idea what you're messing with? I smiled, a slow, knowing smile that made her chest rise and fall with panicked breaths. Oh, but I do, Sophia. I know exactly what I'm doing. The affair. The professional sabotage. The financial ruin. None of it had been enough. Now it was time for the final blow. I exhaled slowly, watching her carefully before delivering the words that would shatter the last illusion she had left. I've been thinking about your future, Sophia, I murmured. And I think you should start planning for it without me. You're going to have to find your own way from here on out. No more pretending. No more charades. She stood there, her entire body trembling, her eyes wide with disbelief. I walked past her, leaving her standing there, broken, defeated. And as I stepped out into the night, a strange realization settled over me. I had won. I had taken everything from her, just as she had taken everything from me. But in the end, there was no joy in it. No satisfaction. Only the quiet, bitter understanding that revenge was not the gratifying victory I had imagined. It was hollow. A victory built on the ashes of a marriage that had been doomed long before I had ever discovered the truth. I had destroyed everything she held dear. But in the process I had lost something too. A part of myself had died along with the love I had once held for her. And I knew I could never get it back. But what I had gained, what I had reclaimed, was something far more valuable. My dignity. My self-respect. And for the first time in a long while, I could look at my reflection and know that I had the strength to walk away. Because in the end, the real lesson was this: revenge might feel justified, but it is never truly fulfilling. The real power lies not in the destruction of others but in the rebuilding of oneself.